So first of all, thank you for joining this webinar today, wherever you're joining from. So good morning, afternoon, evening. My name is Mark Vale, and I am the Chief Product Officer here at CallRoute. And I'm going to be talking to you today about how you could automate your Microsoft Teams auto provisioning, or user management rather. So a bit about SIP Synergy CallRoute, if you haven't heard of us before. So CallRoute is a product of SIP Synergy, and SIP Synergy is our company name, and we've been around since 2011, which we focused on multi-tenanted Cisco HCS to begin with, and then transitioned into Microsoft Teams calling with our self-service CallRoute product, which allowed customers to sign up and connect their Microsoft Teams tenant to our direct routing platform for voice calling. And between 2020 and today, we've increased our capabilities on that platform to bring your own carrier, bring your own SPC, as well as recently focusing on the user management and the automation side of Teams user management. So this webinar is really not about migrations. It's not really about voice specifically. It's about your day two as a Microsoft Teams administrator. So after you've done your migration to Teams, how you're going to manage your users' daily changes throughout your support silos. So whether you're using scripts, spreadsheets, different types of support models, you probably, if you're on this webinar, you're probably using at least one of those. And I'm going to show you how we can help you modernize and streamline those processes. So to understand what CallRoute is, so as I explained to begin with, we came from the calling side of Microsoft Teams, so our SBC as a service. We traditionally started off offering our PSTN services through our cloud routing engine, which we call CallRoute, which allowed you to connect your on-premises voice system, your contact centers to Microsoft Teams using our cloud SBC as a service platform that's multi-tenanted. We increased our capabilities there last year to early parts of this year to bring your own carrier and bring your own SBC, a bit similar to like sort of Operator Connect, but without being Operator Connect, for want of a better phrase. And now we've, in the last few months, we've released our provisioning platform, which is everything that you see here in the red box. So we now work with your Microsoft numbers, your Operator Connect numbers, your own direct routing numbers, and you can bring them into our phone number management system. You can also connect your Microsoft Teams tenant to us. Connect the Microsoft Teams tenant to us, so you can manage your queues, your licenses, policies, and team memberships as well, and then automate those memberships to deliver the perfect Microsoft Teams end user experience to your users. So really the question is, well, what really is a Teams user experience? And if you think about Microsoft Teams, it's spread across all of Microsoft 365, and we have different components that control different things in Teams. So we have up to 38 different policies that we can control the Teams client and user access to different features and what have you. You could also create up to 500,000 teams in Teams, so we need to manage membership of those teams, and should users be a member of or an owner of a multitude of those teams, what calling experience should we deliver to that user, if any, and obviously what combination of licenses, whether we need to give them Teams Premium or whether we need to give them phone system, Teams Mobile license, etc. And those experiences are designed specifically for each job function, and they will change as that person moves within your organization from one department to another as they progress with their careers. So it's a constantly evolving question, is what should be the right Teams user experience for that person based on whatever job they are performing in your organization today. And that role really comes down to the team service owner or the product owner in your organization to define those service standards. So what out of the box experiences should be delivered to users based on whether they work in finance or sales or customer services, etc. And what should be upgradable items, whether they could be self-service upgrades, whether they have to go through an approval process. And then that person then has to document and deliver those service deployment standards and communicate with your support silos to ensure that those experiences are delivered to the end user when they need them. So if we think about how we deliver the team's user experience today, depending on the size of your organization, it'll usually go through at least 4 silos. And it will always start with identity being the most, the first one, because obviously without an identity, you can't really do anything else. So that team will be responsible for creating the user account, licensing them, applying this different security policies around conditional access, Intune, etc. And then once they've finished with that ticket, they'll pass it on to the collaboration team who might do the Teams memberships, and they'll pass it on to the Teams people who might do the Teams policy stuff. And then eventually, if that user needs access to a phone number, the telephony team will deploy the phone configuration. Now, the problem with each of these silos is that every single one will have a different way of doing things, and they might themselves have ways of automating their own particular tasks, but they generally don't speak to each other. I've been on meetings with customers and phrases like, well, the collaboration team is a different team and we're the voice team, and thou shalt not talk to collaboration team, for want of a better phrase. So with everyone working in their own little organizations and without collaborating, it's very hard for them to understand whether their tasks that they're performing are still up to date, whether they're actually delivering the team's experience that they should be doing. And also when they go out to market, they're looking for tools that really solve their own problems rather than solving the wider problem. How can we deliver that perfect Teams user experience to that user using one product? So you might end up with 3 or 4 different types of products. You might end up with a mix. You might end up with some out of the box products that do identity management, which you might already have. You might have custom made scripts. You might create a Power App. It's all very bitty and not very conjoined. So when you're trying to manage any change into that process as a Teams product owner, your job is more complicated than it should be, because you're going to have to communicate those changes to each of those silos, and then they're going to have to modify their solution accordingly. And that really leads to really complicated processes. Some might be documented, some may not be. And obviously the tooling could be inefficient between those support silos as well, which then leads on to people working within that organization's knowledge of what they need to action when they receive a ticket. And if we only have a couple of key people in each of those departments with the sufficient knowledge to fill in the gaps of what needs to be deployed, and they're away on holiday, there's obviously a risk to the business there that the ticket either can't be progressed, or someone with less knowledge is going to go pick that ticket up and potentially deploy errors to the user, and that user is going to have a poor first experience with Teams. And that's going to lead to a ticket escalation, and the circle starts again. But there is a cost to manual processes and errors. So public documentation research puts the average support ticket down at £50 roughly on average, or about $60 to service a ticket to resolution. And that is for every single add, move or change. And that can add up to some quite considerable scary numbers from an IT cost perspective. But what you have to remember is that every time there is an error, the end user is going to only resubmit a support ticket for the error that's in front of them. So if they realize that they haven't got a phone number, they're going to raise a support ticket to say that they haven't got a phone number and they need one. And that's going to be another £50. But then they're going to also realize that they haven't got access to the right teams that they need to get their supporting documentation or collaboration documentation. So they're going to raise another support ticket. That's another £50. And that really just keeps on going. Every time there's an error escalation, your cost is going to go up. But the cost isn't just limited to your IT department. So the end users, how much time are they wasting waiting for us to fix problems that could have been solved through better deployment standards, and a more joined up service offering. And if you think about a outbound salesperson not having access to a phone number and not having access to the right teams for sales training material, the impact to the organization on lost potential revenue is quite significant. And that's going to encourage them to look for workarounds, because most people won't just sit there and wait and say I'm waiting for IT, so I can't do my job. They're going to go and find ways to work around that. So they might use their personal mobile phone to make outbound sales calls, which obviously is a GDPR issue and compliance and what have you. So it's important that we do our best to try and deploy the right experience to users for the first time that they ever use the product, so that everyone could be a bit more productive. So with that, this is a world's first. We were trying to figure out a name for our auto provisioning product, and we've come up with a really original name called Auto. And there he is. So what is Auto? So using our core route platform and building on top of that, we now synchronize your Microsoft licensing, your Teams policies, your phone numbers, whether they're Microsoft numbers, whether they're Operator Connect or your own direct routing numbers, your call queues, and your Teams as well. And once we've synchronized those, we allow you to build groups of configuration, and each of those configurations will lead to a Teams user experience. So you could create your licensing groups. If you use your Azure AD license groups today, you can still use them. You don't have to use the licensing module. But the idea is that you can group your Teams policies into personas that are marked for particular job function or office, location, country, etc. Whether those personas contain a number allocation, and whether those allocations come from a particular range by a particular provider, whether it be Microsoft Operate Connect or your own direct routing, or from a particular tag within those ranges as well. And then if people should be a member or an agent of a call queue, what call queues should they be an agent of? And obviously with Teams as well, what team should they be a member or owner of? And you can create those personas, those experiences in UI. There's no code. And then our automation platform will go and deploy those experiences to your users automatically. So this is essentially how it works. You can cherry pick and cookie cutter it up as much as you want, but if you have a sales team, we can decide that their licenses should be 5 plus domestic calling plan. You can create a license group with those licenses in. Again, if they need specific Teams policies, you can create a Teams policy group or persona that has the right policies, all 38 policies, not just voice. So these work with non-voice users as well, so all your Teams users. Should they be a member of a call queue if they're voice enabled, and what teams they should be given access to when they log in for the first time. And it's a bit like making a cake, really. Each one is a layer of a cake, and the auto provision is the icing on the cake, is kind of how I approach things. So how we deploy them. So if you're familiar with Microsoft Power Automate, then this will be really easy to you. It's condition logic, and because we integrate with your Entra ID or Azure AD, your user objects will have different attributes, such as job title, job title, department, city, etc. There's a bunch of different attributes that you can use, even the on-premises synced ones. And then you can use the conditions to match a person's job function or position within the company to what type of experience you're going to deploy to them. So if the city is Southampton, the department sales, and the job title contains a manager, then give them your base licensing group and the calling plan license. Give them the sales persona with a phone number, give them access to these teams, and give them access to these call queues, etc. And that runs every 60 minutes, whether you're logged into the platform or not. So the benefits of Auto for Microsoft Teams is that there are no scripts, no PowerShell, no spreadsheets. We get rid of them, throw them in the bin. And because our platform is very easy to use, it's very simple, it's very easy for people to come into the portal and see what's configured and what experience a user should receive and what they are receiving as well. So for the team's product owner in your organization, making changes to a product offering is really straightforward. You can roll out new personas to existing people. You can change your persona for new people joining. You can move people across from one product to another. And obviously with the zero hands provisioning, the automation, anybody who joins the organization, as soon as their account's created in Azure AD, we'll synchronize that user, process them against the provisioning rules, and hand them out the correct Teams user experience based on their user account information. We are 100% native cloud, so we don't require any infrastructure to be deployed in your Azure tenant. There's no on-premises software or anything. We don't need massive amounts or any professional services to get going. It's really quite intuitive, and you can get going within a couple of minutes, really. And as you'd expect from any type of change platform, there is audit trail, roles-based access control. And because we aim our platform at simplicity, then there's very little training. So from a knowledge perspective, people can walk into your organization as a new support person, log into the application and see straight away exactly what they should be doing. Connecting to Auto just requires one prerequisite, which is an account that allows us to grab the Graph API consent permissions and the PowerShell permissions just for the application of the settings in Teams that we can't yet do via Graph API. So you can get going straight away. With our Auto solution, we're saying that you can at least save 70% on what you're spending currently on your IT cost using your semi-manual processes. And because we can deploy standards across all users, your accuracy is going to rise, to like 98% we say here, but the reality why it's not 100 is that we can't vouch for the quality of data going into Azure AD. So there's obviously that little bit of discrepancy there potentially, but if everything's right, then you're deploying a standard experience to each user based on their job role that's been built specifically for them. And if we think about how you would manually provision a user if you were doing it, even with some scripts, from account creation to finishing all the steps you need, signing policies, phone numbers, updating spreadsheets, trying to find out what configuration you should apply to that user, you're saving at least 90% of your time just by automating it, because the manual way of doing it would probably take you between 30 and 45 minutes to do a user, whereas we'll provision a user in just a matter of moments. So there will be an inevitable question on the pricing model. So we price Auto based on an enterprise license, based on the number of Teams users in your organization. And this is every person that has a Teams license, because you can use Auto for all your users, not just voice. And if you have, like say 20,000 users, you don't fit quite in each one of these buckets. You basically add the medium and small buckets together to make your 20,000 users. Obviously, the more you have, the more discount there is, etc. And I'm sure Andy, who's in the chat, will answer any more questions on any kind of pricing structures that we may have. With that, I'm going to just drop into a demo now, just to show you our product, if that's okay. So here is what you see from call route when you log in, and our numbers section, you can synchronize your numbers, and any Microsoft numbers that come in from your tenant will group into ranges. Same with Operator Connect, and you can add your Microsoft direct routing numbers if you've got your own SBCs or you've got your third party that's doing your direct routing solution here, and then you can manage those numbers in our portal here. You can tag them as well with multiple tags so that you can create your gold, silver, bronze, or customer service type numbers. And then you can target those tags in your provisioning rules when it comes to them. You can also assign users resource accounts, etc. I don't have one here, I don't think, but for the voice app. But we'll only show the users that are licensed for the capability for your Microsoft numbers. Inside the services, you'll connect to Microsoft Teams, and this is where all the good stuff happens. So you'll see that we have all the users, and I'm going to bring your attention to Andy Wilson here, who is licensed for a calling plan and Microsoft Teams, but doesn't have anything else. And we can see here that if I go on here, this is Andy's Teams client, doesn't have a phone number, it's not a member of any teams, it's a brand new account. Just to speed things up, I've already licensed Andy because we know that Microsoft licensing can take a little bit of time. So now I'm going to build an automated provisioning rule that's going to give Andy a sales Teams user experience. So the first thing that we're going to do is go over to the user personas, and this is where you would spend a little bit of time up front building your experiences, and once they're built, we just consume those experiences. We synchronize your Teams policies to our tenants so we can create a persona that matches and what Andy needs, and we can select from all the policies that you've created in your tenant. So we can go ahead and select what policies we need for voice and for meetings and for chat, etc. I'll just do a couple. Sales meeting policies. So, and anything that says skip, we're not going to touch. So if somebody else or another department is responsible for assigning different policies other than your department, then you can still use the personas and just set the skip on the policies that are not part of your process, and we won't overwrite them, we won't change them or anything like that. Once you set your policies up, you can choose here to say, well, if this person is licensed for Teams phone or a calling plan, should we give them a phone number? And if we should, then what range should we pick the next free number from? So we can select crew as the calling plan range and the emergency location and hit create. And we create that persona here. The next thing that we're going to do is go to Teams, groups, and create a group of teams as well. So again, Andy might need to have access to all the sales teams within Teams. So I'm going to select the 3 teams that Andy needs to be a member of, and then save that. And again, for call queues, Andy should be a member of some of the call queues that we've got on our main number. So I'll select the call queues that I want to add in as an agent to. But it doesn't matter whether it's voice-enabled channels or direct agent assign or distribution list assign. We'll work with all variants of call queues. And when we add them or add Andy to those call queues, we'll add them in the way that they're configured. Now, out of the box, I can go to Andy and I can click into his account, and I can go ahead and assign all these policies, personas, and what have you manually if I wanted to. But I don't really want to do that because I want to save time, right? So, but if you need to override anything, you can come in here, which is the point of that demonstration, is that you can come in and override any provisioning process that has been done to whatever you need. But we're going to go over to the auto provisioning section here, and we're going to create a new automation. And we can say sales. And if we go to Andy's Azure account, we can see here that his city set to crew, his job title sales manager, his department is sales. So we can use that information. So we can come into here. The usage location you only need to set if you're going to license the user as part of the automation as well, as per Microsoft's prerequisite. But then you can add your conditions. So you can say, well, if city is equal to crew, and we can say if department equals sales, and if the job title contains manager, this is case insensitive as well, just for, and then we could choose what licensing group. So if we wanted to create a licensing group that's going to assign them a bunch of licenses, we can do. You can select more than one as well. So you can apply different types of license groups, but as Andy's already got one, and to speed up the demo, we'll just skip that one. We're going to assign the sales persona to Andy in this case. We're going to add Andy to the sales teams groups, and we're going to choose whether that he's got to be a member or owner, and what call queue groups they should be a member of. And hit save, and that will create the automation rule. And you can create more than one. You could order them. If I had another rule here, you could drag and drop the priority that the order's going to, the provision is going to run in quite easily. Now, in an hour's time, we'll run the provisioning rule. That's going to actually go ahead and provision Andy a phone number and sign that experience, but you're not going to sit around for an hour. So I'll just click the user sync button to force this. And if we hold up this, we can see, hopefully, we start to configure Andy's account here now. So we're starting to do the configuration, and we should start to see his Teams access start to update. We have a task manager here as well that is showing, it's saying it's provisioning, and I just heard a ping in my ear, so we can see we've got notifications here to say that I've been added to the sales demo training. The teams, so if I go into teams here, I can see now I've been added to those teams. If obviously the dial pad takes a while to show, but we can see that Andy's got a phone number now from a calling plan range, and we should be about done. So his status has changed now. He's now got a calling plan. We can go into here. We can see that he's got the sales persona with the different dial plans, and he's been added to those groups, those call queues. And if you want to make any changes, removals, you could hit the trash icon here, and that will remove Andy from the call queues, remove him from the groups, the team, sorry. You can change his phone number if you want to. Is Microsoft going to be kind to me if I refresh the Teams client? If not, I've got a fallback way of showing. But there we go, got a dial pad with a number now assigned. So that's the automate provisioning. It's like zero hands. So if once that's set up and running, anybody else who matches that same criteria is going to get the same experience as Andy. Going back to just closing out this before a few questions inevitably going to be asked. Coming soon before the end of the year, we're going to have an API that will allow you to build your approvals flows in your favorite ITSM platform. And if you don't have one, you can build your own Power app that will do the approval process for you, and then use the API to trigger off those provisioning rules subject to approval. The API will also help you with migrations to Teams as well. So if you have a mass deployment enablement project, you'll be able to use the API to leverage the provisioning aspect to override any of the rules that we have. So if you're coming from an old platform with an existing phone number, you'll be able to supply the phone number for a user in the API. We'll go and provision the user based on the provisioning rule you create, but instead of just picking a random phone number from a range, we will use the one that you supply to us to assign to the user, essentially. So from a migration perspective, we'll help you with that as well. And with that, you can go and try Auto free for 14 days without any obligation. If you want to take advantage of that offer, then please email andy.wilson@corey.com, who's our sales director, and I'm sure that he will answer or set you up within just a few moments. So with that, I think I'm pretty much on time or just over time. Thank you very much for listening to this webinar. I will gladly go through any questions that you may have at this moment. Thank you.